The last thing my father ever said to me was a command that felt like a cold, sharp blade. Go. I was only 11. I stood on the gravel driveway with a beat-up duffel bag in my hand while my aunt's car headlights swept across the yard, and my father didn't even bother to turn around. For 20 years, I carried the heavy burden of believing that the man who raised me had discarded me like a sack of spoiled feed. So, I built a hardened life 3 states away, carefully ensuring I never had to rely on a single soul. Then, last August, halfway through my first vacation in nearly a decade, my phone buzzed on a beach towel. Fly home. Don't say anything to your parents. I almost laughed out loud because my parents hadn't acted like parents since I was a child. But the next message contained 2 specific names, and suddenly, the floor dropped out from under me. I flew home that very night. At the terminal, a lawyer and 2 officers were waiting for me, and what they revealed knocked the wind out of me. The cruelest act of my father's life turned out to be the ultimate gesture of protection, and what my mother did next is a truth so bitter I still struggle to speak it without my hands shaking. Welcome back to this space, where the quietest members of a family are often the ones holding all the secrets. If you've ever been handed a narrative about yourself that you never had the chance to correct, stay with me. I am 31 years old, working as a large animal veterinarian outside of Bozeman, Montana. This means most of my life is spent in someone's freezing barn at 3 a.m. The night before all this unfolded, I was elbow deep in a heifer named Pickle, correcting a calf that decided to enter the world sideways. The rancher was weeping, his wife was praying, and I was the only person for 40 miles who remained completely steady. People don't call me because they like me, they call me because the worst has happened, and they need someone who won't flinch. I excel at being the unshakable hand in the darkest hour of a stranger's life. I had a paid-off truck, a thriving practice, and a house with a kitchen that only needed 1 chair. My Aunt Ruth used to say that I collected reasons to avoid holidays like other women collect recipes. She wasn't wrong. I had spent 2 decades proving I needed no one, especially not the family that mailed me away at 11 and never sent a follow-up letter. I would have kept that wall up forever if Ruth hadn't forced us both into a beach house trip that July. The Outer Banks in the summer is loud in the best way possible. Ruth's adult children were there, along with my cousins and their kids, creating a porch atmosphere filled with the scent of sunscreen and steamed shrimp. These people weren't my blood, technically. Ruth was my father's younger sister, and when my father, Glenn, sent me to her, she could have treated me like a charity project. Instead, she taught me how to operate a tractor, signed my report cards, and sat in the front row when I earned my doctorate. Her family became the only one that ever felt real to me. On the 3rd evening, one of the younger kids asked me, with innocent curiosity, when I was going to take her to see the famous Nebraska farm, the one with the red barn from the old photo on Ruth's wall. The porch went dead silent. Ruth set down her tea with a look I'd only seen twice in 20 years, a tightness around her eyes, like a woman bracing a door against a coming storm. "Don't fill the child's head with that place," she said, cutting the conversation short and shifting the topic to the fireworks. I let it go, as I was trained to do. But later, I caught her watching me while I dried the dishes. The way you watch someone you're terrified is about to uncover a dark truth. I told myself it was nothing. I poured a glass of wine and walked out to the dunes to watch the darkness crawl over the water. Then, my phone buzzed against my hip. I expected it to be the answering service for another emergency barn call. Instead, it was a number I didn't recognize, bearing a message that would burn my carefully constructed life to the ground. Fly home. Don't say anything to your parents. I read those words 3 times. The wind blowing off the water carried the scent of cut grass, and just like that, I was 11 years old again. It's strange how a scent can transport you. Back home, it was the smell of alfalfa. The night they sent me away, the entire farm reeked of it, fresh, sweet, and suffocating under a purple sky. I had come downstairs for water and found my mother and her brother, Roy, at the kitchen table with bank statements spread out like a gambling hand. I didn't realize until much later that they were my grandmother Nadine's financial records. Roy looked up, saw me, and his face turned ice cold. He leaned toward my father, who had just walked in from the fields, and said, "Look, the girl saw." My father turned the color of dishwater. No one explained a thing to an 11-year-old. By morning, my bag was packed. My mother stood on the porch, arms crossed, while Ruth's headlights cut through the dark lane. When I begged her to tell me why I had to leave, she delivered the words that defined my life for 20 years. "He didn't want you, Willa." Nobody did. My father stood by the truck, wearing his green and black flannel, his back turned to me. He wouldn't turn his head. Not when I called his name, not when I sobbed, not even when the screen door slammed shut behind him. "Go," was all he said. So I went. For 20 years, I believed that lie because an 11-year-old trusts her mother, and because not a single soul ever reached out to tell me otherwise. Standing in the salt air now, with my phone in my hand, I finally had someone speaking a different truth. I am not a woman who jumps just because a stranger tells me to. My first instinct was to verify who was behind that burner phone number. I called it, but it went straight to a generic voicemail with no name attached. I ran a reverse lookup, and all it gave me was a regional area code for eastern Nebraska. I sat on the cold sand, analyzing the situation like a medical diagnosis. Whoever sent that knew my cell number, knew I was currently traveling, and knew that the word parents would trigger something deep inside me. This wasn't a random wrong number. This was someone who had done their homework. I texted back, "Who is this?" The reply was almost instantaneous. "It's about your father. Your mother and Roy cannot know you are coming." Reading Roy's name in a text from a stranger sent a shiver down my spine that 20 years of therapy hadn't been able to fix. This wasn't a prank. Pranksters don't know about Roy. I stood up, brushed the sand from my legs, and headed back toward the porch. Inside, the family was still laughing over their card game, and when Ruth caught my eye through the screen, her face shifted the moment she saw my expression. I didn't tell her. Some old instinct, sharper than my common sense, told me to keep this quiet for one more night. I booked a red-eye flight from Norfolk to Omaha right there in the dark. On the plane, I calculated the narrative the town of Calhoun had built about me. They believed I was a difficult, thieving child, and that poor Glenn and Brenda had no choice but to ship me off for the sake of the family's peace. I knew this because I had returned once when I was 19, only to watch adults change aisles in the store to avoid me. That day, I learned that you cannot argue someone out of a conclusion that they find comfortable. So, I stopped trying to win their approval and instead poured my energy into becoming someone they couldn't ignore, a highly skilled vet with an impeccable reputation. Let them keep their story. I had a better one written in my own ink. What I didn't know while sipping bad coffee at the airport was the true scale of what was at stake. The Farrell family property consisted of 400 acres of bottomland that had been in the family since 1911. My grandmother, Nadine, had held the purse strings until her death 3 years ago, a death I wasn't even notified of. Somewhere, there was a will, a barn, and an accounting of everything. Someone with access to law enforcement felt I needed to know, and that was enough for me to fly across the country in the dark. At the Omaha airport, I was met by Tom Beck, my father's attorney for the last 19 years, a man I'd never heard of. 2 investigators from the county attorney's office accompanied him. We sat in a sterile, glassed an office, and Tom opened a folder. He showed me a cream-colored envelope, soft from handling, with my name written in my father's unmistakable, aggressive handwriting. He then dropped the truth. Your father passed 6 days ago. He left everything to you. And 20 years ago, he sent you away to keep you safe. I didn't faint from weakness. I collapsed from the sheer weight of 2 decades of grief arriving all at once. The investigation was into the financial exploitation of my grandmother, Nadine. My mother and uncle had been systematically draining her accounts for years. My father had known, but he couldn't act without proof, and he couldn't protect me while fighting them. He chose to let me hate him so that I would stay away, far from their reach. As I sat there, the go he shouted at me 20 years ago transformed from a rejection into the most painful, desperate act of love a father could provide. I finally understood the danger wasn't that they would hunt me. It was that if I stayed, I would have become another obstacle for them to remove.